Welcome to the June 6th Board of Selectmen Select Board meeting. Okay,
Good.
please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hillary, I turn it over to you.
Madison's too.
Right. All right, so at this time, we're going to reorganize the board, and I am going to ask for nominations for the chairman of the select board.
I nominate John Martinez.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have any other nominations? Okay, I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor of Don Martinez being the next chairman, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right. Mr.
I don't
Martinez,
I don't vote, right?
final vote. You are the new chairman.
You're nominated.
Congratulations.
Oh, really? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
We just,
All right, so now it's your turn
I
to,
turn. So I'd like to call for nominations for vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Kelly Grant for vice chair.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
All
Unanimous.
right, congratulations.
Congratulations.
We switch seats. Thanks.
All right. This should be a fun year. We don't need to move now. This is fine. Just want to recognize, and maybe Hillary, you can mention a little bit about this recognition of our Bellingham High School 8th grade civics class. I know that you had presented this and you shared some photos with us.
Yeah.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the
I
project.
think Dennis knows a little bit more about
Does
the
Dennis
project.
know more? Okay.
Yes, he
All
does.
right, great.
Yeah, so the 8th grade civics class, I think some of the members are with us tonight. Madison Voss took the lead on it, and she was representing the class, contacted me. They wanted to do some beautification projects in town, and they did an outstanding job. You saw the pictures with some work at the senior center and also at the town common. A lot of good work, and maybe Madison can introduce the other members of the group that are here and tell us a little bit about the project and why you did it.
You gotta unmute yourself.
I'm not sure who's in the video, in the Zoom meeting, but
Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the project.
So our civics project, we were thinking of ideas, and right by the high school is like the senior center, and everybody that goes to town common all the time. So we figured, like, just to help with like beautification and flowers and trees give us so many benefits for our environment and everything, that we wanted to help Bellingham and help the environment by planting trees and flowers. So we did all the research and we found flowers, places to plant, and we had one of our people involved in the group donate us trees. So we went out on a weekend and we planted the trees and the flowers to help the environment and help beautify Bellingham.
Great, congratulations. Thank you very much for that. Really appreciate it. How many students in the class participated?
So our class split up into two groups, and the group that was involved with the replanting and beautification was about 12 people, I think.
That's wonderful. That's great. Is this something you think next year they might consider doing? I guess it'll be in 8th grade.
Yeah.
So it won't be you next year. I understand, but maybe the next civics class next year will do something similar. Maybe you started something wonderful here for the town. Thank you.
Thanks, Madison.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. Well, next on the agenda is a conversation with attorney Devin Braun from KP Law.
And Devin is with us. We
Devin,
had some
yeah.
questions on the remote participation. I know Hillary had provided again the KP Law fact sheet on that. I think the biggest concern, and Devin's here, joined us, but I think the biggest concern had to do with that bullet which references individuals that notify the chair that they won't be in attendance for reasonable cause. And the question the board had was, who determines that? And what do we do if somebody's abusing it? So I think, does that kind of summarize the number one issue? I think it did. Good evening,
Good
Devin.
evening, Devin.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Select Board. Thanks for having me. So I take it you're all somewhat familiar with the regulations, and essentially they in the open meeting law, the regulations on the open meeting law would authorize the Select Board to adopt a policy on remote participation if it would like. And the regulations set forth sort of minimum requirements that are, necessary to have remote participation, but they expressly authorize the board to set further restrictions or limitations on the remote participation policy. So in getting to the provision that you reference, I think it under the regulations, it provides that members of the public body can participate remotely only if physical attendance at the meeting would be unreasonably difficult. And so I understand that the board had questions about what might constitute unreasonable difficulty. And unfortunately, the Attorney General has not given any guidance under the open meeting law on what that might be, unreasonable difficulty. There used to be 5 enumerated provisions that were removed, and that were sort of geographic distance, personal illness, disability, things of that nature. Now they just take out the list of 5 things and replace it with unreasonable difficulty. And so that term is kind of malleable. And so I know that, the board was concerned about it, but there are ways, in my opinion, to kind of give some guidance to your local public bodies on what the board might deem an unreasonable difficulty. If you adopt a remote participation policy, you could enumerate situations that would be covered, but such as like emergencies, personal illness, weather-related emergencies, if that were something that made attendance unreasonably difficult. The other thing is that the Select Board can revoke the remote participation policy anytime it wants. So if you find that there's a concern that public body members are abusing the privilege of remote participation, or it's just they're not coming in person and you don't like it anymore, you just can revoke the policy by a simple majority vote in the same manner that you would adopt the policy. The other sort of backstop on it is that you do have to give the chair an explanation. I think it says the notice of the reasons and facts supporting your request to participate remotely. So there is going to be at least some measure of documentation, at least with the chair of each local body, as to why a particular member is participating remotely. And the chair has some sort of oversight as to whether that's permissible or if, there is any sort of abuse of the process going on. And then as I mentioned, that you could set forth a policy that limits the situations that you could participate remotely. So I think those are kind of the only safeguards on this unreasonable difficulty standard. I have also seen other towns that were concerned about it set a limit on the amount of times per year that a board member could participate remotely, maybe 3 times per year or whatever you are concerned about. And that is a way to sort of limit it a little bit. You definitely would need to have an exemption for anyone who's participating remotely due to a disability, because you can't limit how many times someone can participate remotely under the Americans with Disability Act. But as long as a limitation doesn't violate state or federal law, you can kind of set whatever policies the Select Board deems appropriate in adopting a remote participation policy.
Any questions?
I had a question, Mr. Chair. Originally, back pre-COVID, we had this stipulation, right, that it was limited to, it actually wasn't remote participation, but it was the number of meetings you missed, right?
3
There's
consecutive,
three, right?
it's in our bylaws,
So-
our charter.
3 consecutive then?
3 consecutive meetings.
So just for those of us that weren't on the board back then, what was the rationale behind that?
So we still have a provision in the charter and the
Charter,
bylaw that
okay,
says
right.
if you miss so many meetings, you could be subject to notice by the chair of a board if you're sitting on the zoning board of appeals, and there's a member that's consistently missing. But in this case, this would obviously
Make it
is a
easier.
little different.
Right.
Yeah. The board did discuss remote participation's been something that's been around for a little while.
Before
The board
the
did
pandemic,
discuss it pre-pandemic and chose not to move forward with it. But Devin, have you heard that it's likely that the state budget is going to include a provision to extend the COVID executive order, if you will, to allow Zoom meetings to go another year?
Yeah, I would think it's likely. We haven't heard for sure, but I kind of could see it being extended for another year, especially if the COVID numbers are still kind of what they are right now. Or, alternatively, I think they could just leave it and try to get things going back to normal, but we haven't really heard anything concrete.
Yeah, so it might be the board could still certainly act to adopt it, but remote participation is scheduled to end, I believe it's July 15th.
July 15th, yeah.
Yeah, the word is that it's being included in the budget to extend it another year. Now, that might get knocked out, I don't know, but.
Right.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Devin, I have 3 questions. Can we stipulate which boards are able to go remote and which ones must be in person?
I don't think so. If you're going to adopt a remote participation policy, I think the regulations say that it has to be used by all public bodies in the town. And I think Bellingham has a local commission on disability, if I am correct.
Yes.
And the local commission on disability can also adopt its own remote participation policy outside of the select board. So, but that's separate. I think if the board's going to adopt a remote participation policy, it has to be sort of applicable to all.
Appreciating that it applies to all boards, if the chair is remote, does the chair relinquish control to the vice chair?
The chair has to be physically present at the meeting. So if the chair can't be physically present, they have to delegate authority to chair the meeting to someone else.
And given what was already said about the 3 times in our charter or bylaws, does that mean we have to update those bylaws, or is it assumed that it takes effect?
I haven't taken a look exactly at the language, but I think if you're adopting the policy, you could reference either that charter or bylaw provision. And I think one consideration would need to be whether participating remotely is being deemed absent for the purposes of that provision. And I don't think it probably would be, but you would want to clarify certainly how this remote participation policy would affect that 3-meeting policy.
And the chair being in person, presumably if everyone is remote, the chair is the chair.
So the chair has to be in person and a quorum of the public body has to be in person.
But when we were full remote, we were all on Zoom.
Right, so that's so the remote participation under the COVID pandemic legislation is different than the remote participation under the regular open meeting law.
Thank you.
So Devin, I have a question regarding the disabilities. You may or may not be able to answer, but there is, permanent disability, and then there's like limited disability. For example, somebody is in a car accident and they're bedridden for 8 weeks or 12 weeks. Would they fall under, and they were able to participate remotely? They're not the chair. Let's say they're not the chair. They would be okay under that because it's a temporary disability and they're not able to get out of their bed? Or I'm just curious as to where you draw the line, or someone that has cancer and is, going through chemo treatments. I'm just curious as to where that falls within disability laws.
Yeah, so it would be governed by the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I'm actually not entirely sure whether temporary disabilities are covered, but I would think that they are. Yeah. And what that really just requires, assuming that they are covered, especially if it were a medical or physical disability, it really just requires that they are provided with a reasonable accommodation. So if they're requesting to participate remotely, they are allowed to participate remotely. Or they should be allowed.
Yeah. Not that I'm aware of any circumstances, just I wanted to put it out there because you just never know.
Yeah, and like something like, you know, COVID illness, I don't think would be considered a disability. But I doubt that those things are necessarily enumerated in the Americans with Disabilities Act, but if you're adopting a policy, I could take a look if you wanted to clarify.
Any other questions? Dennis, is this something that we need to vote on this evening?
No, it's, you know, yeah, the board had a few questions. I know you had considered it at the last minute meeting and, you know.
What's the
And
flavor of
so
the board to vote on this evening, or is there any reason not to?
I'm
Who's
not
gonna
comfortable
extend?
on it right now, because I
Okay.
think we need to make
Yeah.
our own parameters on it.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
comfortable just using someone else's at this
Sure.
point. That's just my.
Well,
personal
so
opinion.
these are the minimum requirements. So
Right.
you- Like she said, you could add additional
I heard,
provisions
yep.
set by the board.
So maybe we just table it and have a conversation, come up with our own, or do something we defer to, not to the bylaw.
I mean, if
Charter
everyone
review
else is
committee.
comfortable.
So what were we
You
asking,
can.
what are we voting on, Mr. Chair? Are we voting on
The adoption
adopting
of this
basically
lane,
what
yeah,
this is
yeah,
saying?
Yep. The master
Kelly, you're
law.
saying
But
what?
it's not gonna be really, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, if it's July 15, after July 15, if it's gonna extend it.
And this is moot. This won't matter at all.
Yeah.
Right, right.
That's
Because
what I'm
we'll
saying.
have one more year.
So I'm saying, you know, maybe we can wait, like Kelly suggested, I think, and it's like a wait until July, maybe, in August, and then kind of revisit it back then.
See what happens.
Yeah, let's see what happens. I'm just,
We
you
can
know,
wait.
that's what,
Makes sense.
Mr. Fowler,
That's fine.
everyone fine with that? So we'll wait till after, see what
I
the
would
state,
say
how
so,
the
yeah.
state
Yeah.
moves. And then if they don't move, then we can make a decision at that point.
and that will give us a little time, you know, to put some input on the thoughts together.
That's fine. Okay, so thank you very much. If there's no more questions, you can have your evening back.
Thanks, Devin.
Or
Thank
sounds
you very
good.
much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. The only thing I'll just say is I can, you know, put together also a draft policy or send you a sample one. And then if that's circulated in advance of the July 15th deadline being extended or coming to a close, then you guys can have more of a concrete
That would
thing
be
to look
great.
at. So you can really, you know, outline which parts you like and don't like, and then we can give it back and forth on what's required and what's, you know, permissible.
And that would be
Um,
helpful.
It would be.
Yeah. Thanks, Devin.
Great.
That'd be great. Yeah.
All right. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a
Thanks,
nice evening.
Evan.
Bye.
Okay, next on the agenda is other business. First is the ARPA project. And I see that we have a grant of $95,000. Somebody want to make a motion, or Dennis, you want to talk about it?
The committee's looking, or had approved a $95,000 addition to a generator project. The project's likely gonna have a shortfall. It's an old generator for a sewer pump station. We certainly don't wanna have a failed generator there. So
Right.
it'd be $95,000 that would be taken from ARPA, and it does require approval by the board.
Mr. Chair, I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the projects as listed herein with said expenditures to be under the direction of the parties noted.
Second.
From second, first and second. We all in, any further discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Dennis, Man Street and Freeman Street acceptance of deeds.
Those are the two actions that were taken at town meeting. They are properties that had considerable back taxes, and I know Mr. Connor had asked if anyone was living there. No one is living in those properties. It was a garage on one, and I don't even think there was anything on the other property.
It's not the house on home.
No.
I know, I keep thinking that's gonna be one of them. It's both owned by the same trust, pretty much, right? Both of them.
Yep.
So do we have a motion to accept?
So, yeah, we need a motion to accept the deed in lieu of tax foreclosure and then pursue it. Do you see that right in that first regarding?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm just
You
moving
wanna-
back and forth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm just going back and forth.
So we do Man Street first?
Do we do them separately?
yep, yes,
Okay.
please.
Okay, great.
Okay, Man Street.
Man Street? we have a motion?
Uh,
Can you say that again, Hillary?
Yeah, I can say the
Say the
motion.
motion, thanks.
Motion to accept the deed in lieu of tax foreclosure pursuant to general laws, chapter 60, section 77C for Man Street, parcel 0090-0073-0000.
So moved.
We have a First, we have a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Connors. All in favor?
Aye.
Any further discussion? None, here, none, motion, boom, boom, boom. Any opposed?
No.
No, motion carries. Yeah, so, okay, next one. Hillary, could you
Yeah,
read
I
that
need a
too?
motion to accept the deed in lieu of tax foreclosure pursuant to general law, chapter 60, section 77C, Freeman Street, parcel number 0090-017B-0000.
So moved.
First,
Second.
second. We have those, Hillary?
Yep.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? My motion carries unanimously.
Question.
Yep.
What will be the timing of our disposition of these properties that's under auction?
Yeah, we are looking to auction them. I've had some conversations with the CFO about that, seeing if there are any other properties we can include with them and whether or not the auctioneer, I don't know if anyone attended the last auction, but the auctioneer definitely drew a crowd. It was very successful. So whether or not they would actually do an auction for just one property, if in fact that was the property. So it is.
Even though they're separate, they're joint.
Yeah, but I mean, a limited number of properties.
That's
as opposed
That's a
to-
large lot to build
there is
Which
some- a
one,
lot
the
of
Freeman
rights there.
Street?
on. I think one said it was
Garage on it.
0.9.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just looked them up on a map because I knew Man Street, but I didn't know
Yeah, it's
It's
right
like
on the-
Freeman
like-
Street.
right on the
but
town
it's-
line.
Yeah.
Oh, so is it on the,
It's on the corner.
Yes.
of Man and Freeman,
But across the street from the Red House.
the two properties?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on the town line.
Ah,
You want to sign the bottom? Yes, please.
oh, yeah, because there's.
So it is something that we want to move with rather quickly since it has a structure on it.
Yeah. Definitely, sure.
Same.
We do.
Okay, next on our agenda is order taking for Box Pond Drive.
And that's an action that town meeting took back in November of 2020 to accept Fox Pond Road, so it's a non-contested. Take.
So again, we need a motion. Is there a motion for that, Hillary? I don't see one in the doc. I'm scrolling through it.
I think
so-
you need to do a motion. I would say just a motion and to
Order of
accept the
taking.
order of the taking for Box Pond Drive.
So moved. Thank you, Hillary.
Second.
We have a first and a
Hillary's
second.
having to work hard tonight.
To call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion carries unanimously. Zipping through here.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we vote to approve the minutes from May 9th. Can we do them together? And May
Yes.
25th?
Sure.
Second,
Catching up.
Mr. Sahin got it.
Catching up this week.
Hey, no one was as quick as Jerry Mayhew, that's for sure.
Jerry did.
Mr. Mayhew.
May he rest in peace.
He really
May he
was.
rest
so
in
quick.
He was very quick. There you go. All right. We were first, we were second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? None, motion carries unanimously. Great. Next, observance of Juneteenth Day. Dennis?
Executive order from the governor's office requires that state and municipal buildings be closed on the observance of Juneteenth, which this year is on Monday. We did not do that last year. We were open, but in light of the fact that we're obviously being directed to do so, not that we wouldn't otherwise, but just I know the schools will be closed. I think the schools are closed and they actually have their last.
They
day
do.
the next day.
Uh-huh.
It is, the last day is a half day. on
Which is
Tuesday.
2 hours, not even 2 hours.
So
Yeah.
it's strange, but Juneteenth is actually celebrated on a Sunday.
So
But the-
Juneteenth
but the
actually-
state, yeah, because I was looking at the calendar today.
It'll be
That's
like
it.
Veterans Day, so like if
Yeah.
Juneteenth is, or June 19th
Yeah.
is during the week, it'll always be that holiday during the week.
Just to let
So
you
do-
know, and then,
We can't vote and oppose it.
you can, but we still gotta close.
I don't think it's gonna make a difference.
So it's a Sunday, but
Yeah.
when it's a Sunday, it'll be Monday.
It'll
the
be a
holiday.
Monday. If it's a Saturday, it'll be a Friday.
Yeah.
Thank you.
DPW bid award, road contract 2022 RRV. Pull that
That
up
was the
there.
one that, yeah, Don had sent out to the board via email. Do you have a copy of that?
Yeah, 'cause I don't see
Oh,
it
I
here.
have it.
Oh, it's an email, okay.
I didn't put it on.
I don't see it on the-
I don't
Sorry.
see it, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Do you want me to do it for my email or you have it in
I
there?
have it. Does someone want to read it?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the contract 2022-RRRB roadway reclaiming, I think I put my glasses on, I can read it. baby.
You got it.
Reclaiming and repaving various streets, parentheses, cold in place recycling, be awarded to the low bidder Seal Coating Inc. doing business in this of Braintree, Mass. The amount is $537,846.44.
Second?
Your first, maybe a second. I'm just curious, can you, what was the high? I know
It was
go
only
low.
one.
It was only one?
Yeah.
I missed that, I didn't see that.
Okay,
And
one
it's
bid,
somewhat
one
of a
bid.
unique, or
Unique,
more
yeah.
unique process, and Don
Okay.
explains the company's been in business for a long time. It did come above the estimate.
Yeah.
If you remember, the last bid came considerably below, so
Yeah.
he's saying you take the two together and
Okay.
we won on one and not so good on the other, but he's very pleased with the company itself.
Okay, take a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, none, motion carries. Next. 0 Point Amendment.
If you remember, 0 Point was the company that we put out an RFQ for battery storage, solar battery storage for the Pearl Street property that the town owns, the site of the former Pearl Street Mill. We entered into agreement, the board entered into agreement at least a couple of years ago, but there's a lot of regulatory steps that they've got to go through. They're asking for a 6-month extension. It is in the contract that up to two 6-month extensions shall not be unreasonably withheld. I think it's reasonable. They spent a lot of time and effort on the project up to this time. It's a small project, 20,000 square feet they'll use of that 8-acre parcel, but it will generate close to $100,000 a year for the lease payment. So it's a good project that we entered into, as I say, I'm going to say at least 2 years ago. I think it was pre-COVID, so everything measured by COVID, I know. So,
Yeah.
it was, so it would require a vote by the board. Hillary does have the actual amendment to the contract. It would have to be signed by the board members, but it would be to grant 0 Point a 6-month extension on their contract. That's the time that they've got to actually pull a building permit. So they'd have another 6 months to get to that point.
Motion?
So moved.
Second? Second, Mr. Connors. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Unanimously. Great, thank you, Dennis. Select Board Project Update.
Yeah, I'd asked Hillary to put that on there just to keep it fresh. I know that there are a lot of projects that the board members have been sending. A few of the items, actually quite a few of the items will be covered by Mr. Morano. He'll be appearing before the board at our next meeting. And I know that Mr. Connor brought up a few of the things that he had mentioned, he's going to come in and update us on. The Red Mill contribution will give us an opportunity to look at that early childhood educational center. So that's something he'll be talking about, where the school committee is looking at or what they're looking at with regard to that. The status, success of the in-house transportation for the number of buses they've had. School resource officer, Officer Houston, has notified us that he has accepted a position with the school department as the facilities manager, and he will be leaving his duty as the school resource officer. So we will have 2 vacancies for school resource officer. I have talked with Chief Daigle about replacing, obviously, Officer Houston, and we have to go through the civil service process, but we will be getting that going. Obviously, the new recruit won't be stepping into the SRO, but the chief will be looking at candidates for those 2 school resource officer positions. One would be an additional position that we're looking at adding to the police department, because not only do we have We have several officers that have indicated that they're gonna be leaving the department fairly soon. And I know it's a point that the board's brought up in the past, why wait till the last minute when we know how long civil service takes. So we have 4 that are geared up for the academy, have dates, and we have 3 more that we're going to be seeking academy dates for. So it's quite a transition in the police department. So Mr. Morano will be talking about. Yep.
I just get concerned that don't have our officers with, in light of all the stuff that's happening around us. It's a little concerning to me.
It
Is like, what's the time frame to
I think that's
backfill those 2 people?
So Officer Houston will be there until the end of June, so the rest of the school
Okay,
year.
rest,
But we
okay.
want to make sure that we're ready to go when
For-
school opens.
okay.
Absolutely.
All right, that's the goal. Right.
And keeping along that same theme, one of the things that Mr. Morano will be talking about, I know we spent some time in it, we have entrapment, at the middle school and the high school, but we don't have it for the 2 elementary schools. And we have those designed, those are actually put out for design. The school committee had that done, superintendent had that done some time ago, so we'll be talking about. And what I like to see is I'd like to see it bid out now, so we have hard numbers when we go to town meeting in November. And we can take a look at the cost and plan for it ahead of time, so that when we're going to town meeting, it's not a guess. It is a lot more involved. The 2 elementary schools are a lot more involved than the middle school and high school were, because they don't have the 2 sets of doors. When you go in the high school, you have another set of doors right after that, like Stallbrook and the Petro. Once you walk in the door, you're in
You're in
the
the building, yeah.
It's concerning, right? So I
Yep.
hope we're
Yeah.
Absolutely.
short runway in
Yeah,
that.
he'll also be giving an update on the athletic field committee. I know those are some of the items that had come up with regard to items of interest that the board had. Also, something that I know several members had brought up, the playground and upgrade of the basketball courts at the middle school. So speak to that as well. So demolition of the Primavera School at town meeting up on the stage, maybe you don't know what you actually approved. Was the first step going towards the demolition of the Primavera School. It was $11,000 of ARPA funds to get the LSP, licensed site professional, into the Primavera School and assess any of the remediation that needs to go on relative to asbestos or any of the caulking in the windows that have to be removed before the demolition. That's another one that we'd like to have out to bid, hard numbers in for town meeting in the fall, so we can move forward with that. It's become an attractive nuisance.
Yeah.
We have children getting in there, and a couple were apprehended by the police department, and I know they took legal action on them just within the last month. So it's just, unfortunately, it's a place where on some websites, and great place to go and hang out, I guess. I don't know, but we have it boarded up, we have it secured, but people go and bash doors or smash windows and they're able to get inside, unfortunately. So we don't want to have a disaster down there. The MassWorks Hartford Avenue grant that was submitted on Thursday, the deadline was Friday, so it was submitted in time. It's a $10 million grant for reconstruction of Hartford Avenue from the southbound off ramp all the way back going towards the intersection with Cedar Hill Road. So that was submitted, and I know I've talked with Representative Soder, who's been very much involved with this grant application, as you know, and he's looking to have Mike Keneally come down again as the Secretary for Housing and Economic Development. Secretary Keneally came down and visited with us before the last MassWorks grant, the one for 140 Maple Street. I know some of you were at that meeting. We had it right here. We were successful on that one. Hopefully we'll be equally successful on this one. So those are a few of the items. I know that there are others that the board wants to bring up, and I know Hillary's going to be putting together somewhat of a comprehensive list of all the items that you've been forwarding.
I think, did I put one up there for you guys to look at?
Yeah, I have
Yeah,
it.
it says,
Yeah, good.
projects.
I know I've received a number of calls, questions from people I've seen out about, okay, so what's next with the Meehan property? So I think I'd like to have some context on what their next steps are. Not tonight, obviously, but
Yeah, but what
I
we
think that's
can
a-
do is schedule Tim to come in and talk, because Tim has had conversation with Mr. Meehan about
Okay.
boarding it up, about removal of the building. exactly that, what the next steps would be. So I think that he'd be an appropriate one to have come in and meet with us. Well, see, we had mentioned a couple others. where
And
we thought-
Bondi is another one.
Bondi.
Bondi, Sunoco,
Yeah.
those are all 10 things, right? So do you want me to put this on the next agenda
Yes,
since
please.
since Peter's coming in, we can have him come in.
So for the next one, we'll do Mr. Morano and those projects, and do you want to do Tim at that same time? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, if we could, I'd like to. So the other thing I want to bring up, it's just a question, because after that town meeting, I too, just being around town, people said, Don, what happened? How did this not pass? I mean, the pros, the cons, et cetera. And one person said to me, and I couldn't remember, I didn't have an answer for him as I was walking into the pool store. Why is Cedar Hill one way? Why did the town, and when did the town act to make that a one way? Because the point that this person made, and he lives on Cedar Hill, he actually lives on it, is that he goes, I have to go up Arrowhead or Farm Street to get to my home. I don't understand why when I come off the highway or come off the Home Depot, I have to go through the light and take a right. Why can't I just go on to Cedar Hill? So I go, I have no idea, but I'd love to understand the history, why and when that happened.
When we met with the neighbors too, they said, well, if you live on the street, you go through the one-way anyways.
It makes no sense.
I hate to be a town historian, but
But please,
it was
no, that's why I'm asking.
It
I
was
don't
a terrible accident there where a car flew through and some people died and came before the select board probably 30 years ago. And the select board said, well, we can make it one way if everyone wants it one way. And the select board voted to make it a one way.
That's
But that's the history. And that was before there were lights there, but nothing says that this board can't make it two-way again.
I'd like to entertain that discussion again, but to me, the gentleman who lives on Cedar Hill said this to me, it made no sense whatsoever why that for 30 years, that's a one-way, where all of the towns, because the road seems wide, but I would defer to our safety officer. Is that a normal width road? Does it make sense to go back to two-way? Because he said, why do I have to go Arrowhead or Farm Street to get to my home?
But that was why the neighbors came in, and the neighbors actually wanted, but it was before it was signalized too.
Yeah.
So the signals make a big
I remember
difference.
that, I remember the time when it
It's the
wasn't.
same status as why we have a blinking light at Cardy's funeral home, because there's multiple major accidents.
Yeah, and it's been brought up to this board before about putting a permanent light there because of the,
And we did get the estimate on that. And
Yeah.
one of the things that we are getting a engineer analysis on is the signalized crosswalk. So at least you'll be able to hit the crosswalk signal. Traffic will be stopped. You'll have the flashing for pedestrians, but only be for pedestrian crossing. So as you know, we talked about that a month or so ago, and you can't just put them up. You have to have the engineers take a look at it and make sure it's proper sight distance, and we don't create more of a hazard than maybe there is now. So that will be coming back to you, but that would be the alternative to a signalized spot at Nan Street. But we're also looking at the same thing up on Hartford Avenue. I think you know that as well. We've had two accidents actually. The nun that was killed. And the boy
At the turn right there. Yeah.
So that'll be coming back to you as well.
Okay. All right. Any other projects that we want to add to the list and continue? So it's one thing to have a list. It's another thing about how do we take action. So identifying, to me, looking at this list and prioritizing that list, because we can't do them all.
Yeah.
Some have been on the list, like I'll just say the dog park's been on that list for a while now. Do we need to prioritize on what's best for the town? What's best for our community? How can we best use ARPA funds and other funds to do? I know that we're doing some things at the softball field, but at the same time, I think Dennis, is this, from your experience, is this something that we set a separate committee to work on, or is this something that we workshop ourselves and bring some people in from the town possibly to work with us to identify and prioritize projects, and then identify what do we need to do to take action, to get action?
I think a lot of these things are things that we're going to be able to give you an update on, and there's action being taken. Some of them will be addressed by town officials, and the ones that we can't handle, maybe we do look to do those things. But for instance, as we said, the Red Mill, I know the school department is, Peter will speak to that. Bondi update, I have had quite a few discussions with Mr. Waukee, who's the owner of the golf course of late, and we will have something for you before the end of the summer. It doesn't mean that we're gonna have anything that's moving forward, but we'll at least have an
Just an
update for
update,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of these things, upcoming retirements, we did have proposals in, they're due in, we've got 3. They're due in by June 10th for the assessment center. We'll be now paring that down to 1 or 2 firms, then we'll ask the firms to come in and appear before the board. And at that same time, give kind of an overview of the process. I know one of the firms I talked to, they've got 40 years of experience, so they've been doing it for a long time, a lot of experience with that. So as far as the fire chief and the police chief go, I think that's the direction we go, and the costs are a lot more reasonable than I thought. I know that the costs seem to be in the $10,000 range per assessment center. We were thinking 20.
That's not
That's
bad
about
at
half
all.
of what we thought. So that's a good sign. DPW director, I think we need to determine if we want to consider doing it in-house, and if we do, maybe reach out to that candidate we may be considering and talk with them. So some of these things I think we'll be able to chip off and get moving pretty quickly, and then some of them might be a little bit more time consuming, like the dog park.
That's where I was
something to
going
meet
with that,
with
yeah.
the town common trustees, if we're gonna move forward with that, and then so.
Yeah, and I'll just point, I know we talked about a playground upgrade. I know there's something going on in Stallbrook, there's funds going, that's a different type of playground. And the reason why I brought up the middle school, and part of it was, I was at the town common not too long ago with my grandsons before they moved, and I was talking to somebody about the park, and the woman had made a comment to me about she wished that the equipment was larger for older kids, because it really is, and it is, it's smaller, but that place isn't, that's not the ideal place for a playground anyway, because there's not enough parking. It just is, and unfortunately, we're not, and I don't want to take more parking away. It's a beautiful town common. Why I thought of the middle school, and I know Silver Lake's an option, so because Hillary had raised, well, what about Silver Lake? So I raised that and asked her, she goes, Silver Lake's beautiful, but I have small children and I don't like the lake. And I also have older children, and it's 2 separate areas, and my head goes like this. She said, so for me, so I started thinking about that makes sense, and it's not in the center of town, which is why I thought that where the frog park is now, and I see a lot of kids over there, and the basketball court, we talked about upgrading basketball, it would be a nice central location for older kids, a bigger park. I was down at the ball fields a few weeks ago, I was down watching a game. And that park was nice, but it's small, it's all by Richardson. It's a smaller area. So we have all these little parks scattered around the town, but not one central location. That's why I brought that up more than anything. And then I started getting more like talk to people about it. And that's just the feedback I received.
I think the only issue that I see with the location of a bigger park being at the middle school is you have much older kids that are going to go over and abuse it, and that's why it's in the condition it's in, which I wouldn't want to see if we're going to put the money in, but I appreciate your idea about needing a new and better structure and outlet.
So what's interesting is, and I also went over, I don't know if you've ever been over to Oakland Park in Medway. So they redid that whole area. It's over there on Oakland Street. And you would think, and that's kind of the scale and the idea. And what I saw over there, so with my son to take the grandsons to that park, what I saw was a bunch of teenagers playing basketball, about 15 teenagers, boys and girls, really playing basketball. What I didn't see were kids hanging out smoking dope and doing that kind of stuff. There was families there. There were a lot of families there with smaller children, small, maybe 3 years old, all up to 10 years old. Then you saw high school kids playing basketball. And that's what really, where this vision started to come from. When I saw that, I know, who knows, maybe we could even have a men's or youth men's basketball league that we used to have years and years ago when the courts were in good shape. So it's just a thought. It's just an overall thought. Maybe it's a dream of mine to see a nicer, if you ever have a chance and you're over in Medway, run down Oakland Street and take a look at that park. It's the Medway Senior Center. It's quite nice. It's really, really is nice.
Do we have, I know you just mentioned that about the common, not having any enough parking space. Obviously, the common is, that's kind of center location-ish. Do we own anything around it, or any possibilities like expand it, not right away? Like anything behind, or I
There's a
can,
little area behind which the trustees were talking about for a dog park, but the limitation is there's a brook back there.
okay,
And the question is gonna be how much usable land there actually is,
Right.
Once we start looking and delineating the
Okay.
wetland back there. It may be a little on the tight side, but there's not a lot of property there.
In the middle school playground that I'm referring to, that might go to that committee anyway.
Yeah.
Because they decide what's done with that land, school committee, and
Right.
schools, correct, anyway. It's
On
not
that
something
committee,
we can take
we have
action.
drawings. so.
I will say, the one problem that we have had with Frog Park, and we went down recently and just took some things out, because what happens is you have middle school children and high school children that go in there, and, you know, they're a little rougher.
Yeah, I
With
agree.
with the apparatus. And there was one thing with a spring, and it was a frog, and it's Frog Park, and that thing would break every single, because what they would do is rock on it until the spring broke. And it was almost like an initiative to try and get that done every year. So, you know, we've left the actual structure there now. I don't know if you've been down there, but we took everything out except for the structure itself, because it's the one thing.
Yeah.
The seesaw's gotten broken, the swings. I think, you know, so that's the only issue with that location.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I
Yeah,
understand.
Finding the right spot is.
It's not gonna make everybody happy. I know it's
Yeah.
a challenge. It
is the
really
park that's still, where Macy's location used to be? There was an old park there years ago. I haven't
It's
been
still
down there.
there.
It's
Still
a
there.
small, it's a small park,
Baseball
not a
field.
lot of parks to enable it there
Not a lot of parking either. Okay. Well,
now. But
thank
that
you.
would be, yeah, that would.
That's
be,
why I thought of that area.
Yeah.
To your point, though, getting back to what you said about, are they things we can do, or do we need kind of subgroups? I mean, there's a couple things on here that I think we need, when like looking at town council versus select board, that's gonna be a huge conversation that needs to involve many different factions of people.
So I'm not sure I follow.
So going town council versus select board, so
Oh, right,
going
yeah,
like
yeah.
what Franklin does
Yeah.
now, and I think that would have to be a ballot question.
Yep, and
Or a
the
town
charter
meeting
change.
vote?
Charter change.
Charter
too.
change, yeah, so that there's some things that I think would definitely,
For instance,
require
the
that.
charter review going now, minor changes don't need a ballot question. That would be a significant change, so that would require, because you'd be doing away with town meeting as well.
Yeah.
I would propose that we take the list and anything else anyone wants, and we break it up into like tasks.
Mhm.
And then we, obviously, Mr. Morano is coming in for covering 5 of these, and then others, and then prioritize and put 1 a month on. So if we have 2 meetings,
Great.
we have whatever block is
I
there
was gonna
for
say that,
once
maybe
a
pick
one a
one
month.
and do one.
Pick
of
one.
these.
Yeah.
That's
That's a great idea.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple things that I would just like to throw out on the table that I think we need to put out there. Just, that doesn't have to vote on it, but we met with the neighbors from the bridge to Rawson Road. And when we left that meeting, there was some discussion about them rezoning their property,
Mhm.
and their next opportunity would be to do it in November. In light of that, I think somehow we need to reach out to those neighbors and say, is that something they wish to pursue? Because I don't know that they realize the timeline to get it on the November
Warrant.
warrant.
True, that's a good
Good
point.
And if that is the case, looking to continue the rest of the way.
Do you mean reaching out to all of the same abutters that were gonna have land takings that
Yes.
we had in here?
Yeah, in light of what they know now,
Yeah.
would they like to? Because if they miss the deadline, they're pushing it off.
To the following.
And
Yeah.
do we want to have these people move ahead with the Hartford? I know we can't stop the Hartford Avenue project, but for them to be caught over a barrel where, Quint Roth was here and he said, I'm gonna lose my septic system. Well, if it was rezoned business, he might approach the situation differently as opposed to a resident. So there's no sense in moving your septic system if your goal is to sell your property as a business.
Right.
So, and I think our board, we were invited to sit in at that meeting for a reason, that we should at least follow that discussion and say, the Mass Works grant is now approved and going forward. How would you like to proceed?
How can we help you, basically? Yeah, so can we, is it you suggesting that we ask them to come back in? and have a conversation, or what are you suggesting?
I think we have a conversation either offline or with the board, I mean, either way.
Mhm.
Well, and I think to both of your points, Kelly and Michael, there's things here that we just need someone to come in and give us an update on. And there are other things that we need to have sort of a spin-off,
Yeah.
whether it's a group or,
I mean, I would ask if, perhaps Kelly and I can just go through the list or whomever and
Yeah.
break out, so.
Yeah.
That was the DOT thing. Second, I lost my mind on the Parks Department the other day.
really, shocker.
Their equipment was broken. They scalped and ruined acres upon acres at the high school. That will take 6 to 8 weeks to recover in advance of the fall season. And this full-time Parks Department status has to be addressed as part of next year's budget, I think.
I mean, are you suggesting that we may look at having a
Well, I
full-time
would give
Parks and
you,
Recs
yes,
person?
in some capacity, and I'll give you an example. Before graduation, the high school was beautified. And you don't just, as a high school student, drop mulch on top of grass and say it's done. There's a problem inherent with part-time workers starting 8 weeks late. I have a problem that the water is still not on at the high school, and we have a contractor that's responsible for the town's sprinkler system. So it's not the highest priority, but there were things that Roland got done that have slipped through the cracks. So, other thing, I
So
believe
you're
we,
suggesting full-time parks personnel.
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you still need the kids to do retention ponds and everything else. But there's a problem.
I'm sorry, since Mr. Arcan, no longer with us.
He passed away, yes.
Yeah, he passed away, yeah. So the person in his position, and did we lose some of the employees? or-
There was an employee that was responsible for the Blackstone Street area that has opted to work for the senior center
Okay,
as opposed to that, and things have slipped through the cracks.
okay,
And so it's, I don't think it's anyone's direct fault. It's we lost a worker that was replaced by teenagers.
Yeah.
That arrived late.
We lost a senior 40-year worker replaced by
yeah, I was gonna say that.
teens who
Losing Roland.
may not necessarily know what they're
Yeah.
doing.
And more on a formality, I believe we need to take a formal vote on KP Law after town meeting too. So
Yeah, we
I would
would've
make a
done-
motion that we
you wanna do
retain
that now?
KP Law as town council for the next year. Background sign, after town meeting, you have to
Yeah, the
reappoint
next meeting,
town
right.
council.
Oh, okay.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Question,
Opposed?
it's not on the
Question?
agenda, but.
No, that's
So,
okay.
under
He can bring
business.
it up and then.
Okay. Sorry. I'm in favor then.
So we have unanimous. Any further questions? Motion carries.
One last thing.
Sure.
I am incredibly uncomfortable that nothing has been done relative to at least identifying who the school resource officer, or at least one of the two are, as we have a 1-month window to pass on the knowledge of Officer Houston. And I'm not sure that every officer may or may not be given the opportunity to pursue that.
That was my point earlier. Very concerned about those remaining vacant.
I will absolutely second that, having children still in multiple schools here. There is one officer in particular that has been very visible to students as far as DARE and other things, who I would love to, I don't know if that's what that particular officer wants, but in my opinion, he would be the next logical person. But I don't know if this is a conversation we have with.
Can we bring the chief in or?
Yeah, I can tell you that
Ultimately.
the chief only became aware of Officer Houston's departure last Wednesday. So,
Okay.
yeah, that wasn't something that Officer Houston had shared with him. So I did have a conversation with the chief. We did talk about getting 2 SROs
Yeah.
back in the school. There's a substantial training process. It isn't just pick somebody and put them in there. They're gonna have to go through some training. So
Yeah.
the bottom line is we'll have them in the schools. It's just a matter of getting them up to speed with all of their.
So that's
all
what
of
your
their
point was,
training.
that by fall of next year we'll be in.
No,
good shape?
no, well, we'll have them in. We need to have the deer ops, the SROs back in the school when they open in the fall.
Yeah, that's what I-
This
that's what I
fall.
just said.
Oh, I thought you said next fall. I was-
No,
this
this,
fall.
we have
Yeah,
this
this
summer to figure it out. We've got-
Absolutely.
So has the chief outlined with you a plan of what he intends to do?
Well,
I know it's just last Wednesday.
yeah, so we're calling for additional, as I said, there's four slots for new hires. We're adding another 3, so that's 8 officers going into the academy. And that's important because they backfill the ones that'll be coming out to go into the
Right.
schools. You still need, obviously, officers on the street.
But will he be looking inwards to his department to replace Officer Houston, or would he consider looking outside the town
No,
to
it'll
hire
be,
someone
no,
with that experience?
yeah, it'll be somebody from within.
With it?
Yeah, two from within. Whether or not there'll be volunteers or not remains to be seen, but the chief has the right to appoint.
Well, I was gonna ask that next.
Procedurally, if someone says they're interested and he doesn't choose them and then appoints, do we have any union issues?
Just like the chief has the right to appoint detectives and their officer or any.
I guess I would just be concerned that if there was an officer that wanted the role and was told no, and they say, screw it, I'm leaving, then
I don't know that. I mean, I'll talk with the chief, but if he has a volunteer, I think he can please. Especially if it's someone that, is doing the deer role now. So,
You betcha.
yeah.
Okay. Any other new business?
I have something under new business.
Okay.
Josie reached out to me, Josie Dutel, our senior center director, and she would like to put on the docket the possibility of having a Pride Day next June for the town of Bellingham. She sat in on a conversation with the folks in Franklin, and they're having a big Pride Day, and she wasn't sure what the actual protocol is, if it's something that needs to be approved by the select board, but she'd like to form a committee and just kind of get the wheels in motion for it potentially to be something that we celebrate in Bellingham. So I wanted to bring it up, as I don't know if we have to approve it or what the protocol is. Dennis, Hillary, I'm not sure. Mr. Chair, what are,
I certainly don't know. I certainly saw the activities in Medway over the weekend, and putting up flags. I saw the march.
June is Pride Month, so I don't know, it's maybe something we
She's
might
not a
want to think about.
resident of the town, though, correct?
She's not, but
Yeah. No, but I'm saying, I think she's great. I'm I'm saying, but would it need someone that would have to live in that town to head a community or
I'd be
whatever?
happy to.
Can't
whatever
anyone just have an event if you pull the right permits at like the town common? You could do a pride event.
Yeah,
I mean, there's nothing
people-
stopping that.
Yeah, just have to organize
I think she was
it.
just
Yeah.
like sort of feeling out, like what does she need to do to try to make that be something that could potentially be part of our history.
With the high school, I don't know what the others, they do a great job of showcasing that
Yeah.
and partnering with the schools. I would prefer to see it done during a school timeframe as opposed to just July and August, if that's.
No, I think
makes
she's
sense.
looking for a Pride Day for the town of Bellingham, not just schools, but the
No, I know, but I
town,
mean,
June.
to be able to advertise it. so
Yeah.
that It's,
100%.
I mean, a weekend or.
I'm just saying, she's not, I don't think she wants to limit it just to school age kids. It's.
No, I agree,
No,
I agree, but
Yeah.
if you do it in August, the school age kids aren't gonna know about that.
They would do it in
No, no.
June.
So have it in
Pride
Pride
Month.
Month when the kids are
Yeah.
still in school, so
Yeah.
everything's
So
tied
what, is there
together.
anything she needs to do that we know of, other than,
She'd be
can
pulling
we,
permits from where, if she's gonna do it at the school,
Where she- okay.
school ground, she needs to talk to Judy Simpson. If she was gonna do it at the town common, then they would
Okay.
need to talk to. First thing, obviously she needs to do is get people to participate on whatever.
Yeah.
is that something that do we need to support it, endorse it? I told her I'd bring it up under new business tonight.
The board can, if it wanted to support it or endorse it and, let her know that they have the support of the board, but it's certainly not a requirement.
We had Bellingham
told her.
Days last year. I mean, there's all kinds of, so there's no reason why not to do
Yeah.
that. I mean,
I think
You
the
see
timing of
other
it would
towns
be
doing it.
in June, but yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's something I think it's important
be-
for us to
And I think
support
it's
that community.
totally doable for next June and
Yeah.
could make it
Okay,
amazing.
all right, I'll happy to be the advocate and search back to her and reach back to her and see what she has in mind. All right, thank you.
Wonderful idea. No, I think it's great. Any other new business?
It's not, I was gonna ask something and then I was thinking about it and then I forgot. We got into police department. If you don't mind, if you
No.
go back for
Yeah, go ahead.
2
That's fine.
minutes. My question is, I know now Doug is leaving, and then I'm assuming we lost like a few officers. We mentioned that last meeting.
Lenny's that's supposed,
I'm sorry?
Lenny, I mean, he's the second
Yeah.
reason, is that?
Yeah.
He's going to be getting his retirement date.
Yeah,
Just
so,
like-
so
Yeah.
my question is, obviously, there's a lot of things that are moving in town. Are we planning or did we have a conversation before my time, with the chief? What we're looking at a year from now on, it's, so how fast we're gonna recoup the officers we lost, and then how many more we need, because the town is growing. So I think that Michael kind of mentioned that, it's last meeting, if I recall that, it's I don't know, are we gonna be prepared year from now on, 2 years from now on? Currently, obviously, we lost Lenny, Doug, 3 other. So are we gonna be available, or are they gonna be available for the town needs?
It's
So-
definitely a challenge because we're hiring a lot of younger officers, but we do have 4 going to the
Yeah.
academy for some of the ones that have left. And we're gonna be getting an additional 3 academy slots. So it takes time to get them into the academy. So it's probably gonna be 6 to 8 months before we get all 8 officers. But you lose 20, 30 years of experience with a lot of these
That's what I
individuals
was,
that
that was,
retire
that
or
was a good
leave.
idea.
So definitely, unless you have lateral transfers,
Yeah.
which rarely do you see. So it's definitely a loss in experience, but we are increasing the size of the department by increasing, I mean, we peaked at 32 officers. This will get us back to 30 officers. We're still 2 below where we once
Yeah.
were. I know fire, I know you're gonna be meeting with the chief next week,
Yeah.
and he'll tell you that he feels there's a need for additional manpower, and it's, when we put the budget together, next year, it's one of the things we're gonna have to take a hard look at. I know we have a lot of new development in town. We've got the new
Yeah.
residential project, we have industrial projects. WS is proposing a 700,000 square foot project in their facility eventually. They're talking about it forever, that all those things add up.
Yeah, I would like to see us ready at that moment, so that's what I was getting at. I know it used to be a young cadets program years ago. I know they no longer exist. That came from the town or from the state?
It was an auxiliary police program, but what's happened is with changing reforms, police
Yeah, the
reform,
police ones, yeah.
the requirements for an officer on the road have just gotten to be much greater, that you really can't have the part-time officers that we once had. I know we do have a cadet program at the fire.
Yeah.
And we've been successful with it. We've had a couple officers from the cadet program actually become firefighters. So, and there's another 1 or 2 that the chief's looking at, but it's just more difficult on the police side.
Okay, I know that in inner cities, they doing it like in the Boston area and stuff, and they have young cadet programs, and now bring the kids, they would like to go into the law enforcement units from the high school.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that
Yeah.
type of thing. as
Yeah, that
opposed
type of
to-
thing,
okay.
just, that's what I was thinking,
Sure. Yeah, I thought you meant along the lines of part-time police officers, which we've gotten away from.
Yeah.
But,
Okay, thank you.
thanks.
Anything else? The last item on the agenda, I just wanted to talk to the board about our next meeting. I talked to Dennis earlier today, and Hillary's aware. The calendar was set, and it was great. I wasn't going to be here on that last Monday because my first business trip in several years, I'm going to Toronto. I need to as part of my new job. I would like to ask the board if we can, I'm going to change my trip, not have the meeting on Monday, but have the meeting on Wednesday. So not the 27th. So I was supposed to come home on the night of the 27th. I rearranged my trip this morning to be back for Wednesday. And Dennis, and so there's no reason why we can't move things. I'm asking to push the meeting back 2 days. So instead of Monday night, the 27th, I'd like to have it Wednesday night, the 29th.
Looking at my calendar, I can be here Wednesday, but I can be on Thursday.
I don't know if we can do it Thursday, right, Dennis? So all I need is quorum.
I cannot be here Wednesday, the 29th either.
I can do.
It can be Michael.
Michael?
Yes. 4 to 3. I don't want to stop to do it the week before. We can't because of Juneteenth. I've already talked to
I mean,
Dennis
like
about that.
later. in the
Or we could do it later in the week.
Yeah, we have two potential public hearings, and the timing sequence could be an issue. We have two licensees that have indicated they're gonna be coming forward with applications, so we definitely want to.
I think the week of the 20th, we'll be pushing it, because I've already talked to the two individuals and told them we're meeting the 27th.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think if we did the week before, timing wise, it would be.
It's just, there's a lot going on.
Yep.
And I'd like to be at the meeting. You know, I rearranged my, life 2 weeks ago for a wedding that was delayed because of the pandemic, to be here for the town meeting. I'm just asking respectfully if we can move it to the Wednesday. If not
Michael,
the
are you
Tuesday.
available?
Pardon?
Michael?
29th,
Yeah.
I'm not available the week before the.
Yeah.
Yeah, 29th
fine.
works.
Okay, as I said, I can be.
Can you zoom
Fine,
in?
but we have-
Can you Zoom?
Huh?
Can you Zoom?
No, I will, I'm not gonna be here. Yeah, I won't have an access. I will do it any other time,
Well,
but
we
it
have
is, yeah.
quorum, so
We have
it's- we don't
quorum.
really need
If it's
to.
going, that's fine. then, you know,
No, I mean, you have a quorum, but there's also,
I know.
That's
isn't that
the-
when Pete's coming
The
in to
P,
talk
P was
about?
scheduled
That's
for
a
the
lot.
27th, so
Oh.
we don't even know if Pete.
We can put him off till the
Yeah.
July meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, because I know everybody wants to be there when.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. That's why, when you said Pete was gonna be here, I mean, unfortunately, there's not much I can do. I've got to be in this event on Monday, not unless we try to do it on Tuesday. I mean, it just cut, I'll cut my trip back 2 days.
Well, I think if you have a quorum on the 29th, and we're gonna ask Pete.
Yeah.
All right.
following meeting
Pete
anyway.
Push
will-
Pete
we'll
up
ask
and
Pete
just,
to push out
we
to
have a lot
July
of things,
meeting.
stacked up for the 27th.
You and I looked at it.
No, just those, the biggest.
If I even
concern
get
are
them,
those-
like,
yeah.
they tell me they're coming a lot of times, and I don't get them sometimes, so.
So if they don't come, maybe we.
So other than Pete, do we have a lot of things?
No,
Okay,
So
right now,
that's
but
why I'm
it's
thinking,
early.
if other than Pete,
doesn't make sense to.
then we can just push to July.
Push it
the whole
out?
Thing,
We need
you
to have
don't
a
even have a meeting.
well,
Get those
the
two
only thing is if I
public
get
hearings,
these
Oh,
these
public
public
hearings,
hearings, then I
sorry.
can't push, I can't.
So we could have a
Right.
quick meeting on the
Have a
29th.
quick meeting on the
If
29th.
we have these public
But
hearings,
let's-
and if they
but-
don't, we could
Could always-
always, I could always cancel.
It's summer.
And we could do that, but we absolutely want to push Pete, because I
Yeah,
think
okay.
we should all be
So we'll see
here
if Pete
with
can come in July, I think it was 11th.
July 11th, yeah.
And it really stinks, but this is playing before this calendar, and now with everything going on.
So why don't we plan to schedule a meeting for the 29th, because you have a quorum,
Mhm,
and if I don't get those public hearings, then we could cancel it.
that's fine.
Okay.
And then we have Pete come in, ask if he's available to come in on the 11th.
July 11th, okay.
Thank you.
It's gonna be another long Monday for us on the 11th.
Oh, yeah. So we've been meeting before at 5:15 for the charter review and bylaw.
All I can say is, been there, done
Done
that.
that.
I'm glad I wasn't on it.
You can charter review.
I did.
And I did master plan, we did master plan the year
Yeah,
before, so
yeah,
we're,
we did master
he and I are
plan.
done
You're just
after
a
that.
glutton for punishment. I don't know
Four
what.
years.
Yeah.
Well, we can always move that one till later July, because we can move that.
We're close though, we're so.
No,
we're so
I
efficient.
think
Yeah.
as much as we're like,
So-
oh, it's long,
No,
it's better to do
You
it.
know what, maybe this is actually, I'll wait till Cindy comes
No,
back.
go ahead.
You sure?
Yes. Fine.
Okay, so, and just to give a recap of, we've made a lot of progress. There's been a few areas that we've really dug into deep as far as on the bylaw and committee. And one thing came up at the end of the meeting this evening, and Dennis, I can talk about it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and that is, and the point was made that most of our committees in town that we have and boards are made up of 5, 7, and more. The Board of Health, which has a lot of power in this town, is a board of only 3. And the individual, and I won't say who it is, they want to go back to the minutes, they can. So, that seems to be, they only have 3. That really seems to be like a small number. And we should maybe consider having a larger number. I know we have problems with getting volunteers, but I'm just kind of asking the board, and you don't have to answer it tonight, but think about it maybe for the next meeting, conversation, what your thoughts are. You think about what the Board of Health is involved in, the decisions they make, only having a 3-member board, that means that 2 people, only 2, can truly influence the Board of Health policies, the health policies in this town. Do we really want that to just have 2 individuals, or do we want to say your board should really be made up of 5, or do the best for 5? And that's kind of where we ended the meeting at that point, because we're running out of time. But it's something we're going to pick up the next. So I'm really curious as to your thoughts.
Mr. Chair, may I ask
Yeah,
a question? Because
sure.
I'm just thinking about it now that you
Yeah.
said that. And I guess this will be directed to you. Adding 2 more positions to that board, is that considered a big change to that charter? And so we'd have to go to ballot on it,
Yeah.
or,
I don't think it would be just adding 2. I think if we were taking away, it might be more, but we'll ask the question
Okay.
and find out.
adding 2 positions.
So the Board of Health, so the Board of Health only has 3,
Yeah.
and they have a lot of power. And to provide them with power with actually 2 people could make a big change in this town.
Yep.
Seems to be a little bit, where all other boards in this town are
At least
5,
5.
7, or 9, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
So-
offer that
So it was raised.
in light of the Zoom option that exists, that we need more medical professionals on there, and seeing as we have so many walk-in clinics or Milford Regional Physicians Group, that people may be inclined to step up if they didn't feel like they had to show up and could Zoom in. And we need a cross-section of restaurant people, medical professionals on the board.
That's a great point.
Endorsement on the remote participation.
Right,
Yeah, that is
what
a
would that be,
surprise.
would that be reasonable excuse? I just don't feel like.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so that's, that's a good one.
I don't know
like-
if
I-
that's,
I
I don't know if that really is the influencer being remote. I think it's because it's always been 3. You likely, they've been there forever. No one's gonna try to get on that board or try to remove someone from that board, but if there are more positions open, potentially, there may be more volunteers for that board.
Well, the
Pretty hard
reality
to
is,
break that.
prior to the pandemic, we probably really only needed 3 people, but now it's a bigger scope of.
And the town is
level
growing
of
though,
influence.
it's Board of Health, it's more right processing now. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off if I did. Sorry.
You did, but that's okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Son.
Sorry, I got excited. And so more I process it, I kind of actually agree with you because it's the Board of Health is it's all across the board, anything you can imagine. It's all the things going around town and rely on the 3 people. I think it might be a little bit much, and especially the direction we go in. So I kind of like the idea, maybe just go from the 3 to 5.
I'm actually meeting with them tonight, tomorrow night, I can run it by them as well. Just to let them know.
Just gotta figure out how to recruit people.
And I wonder if going from 3 to 5 would then alleviate some of the conflicts that we've had
Political internal
It-
pressure.
it- on the board and
Threes,
with
that's-
things happening.
To your
maybe
point, there are no
spreading
other
it out.
boards that are that small. I think that's,
So maybe we can, that should be on our list of things to.
We discussed with them tomorrow night too.
Yeah.
I know it's one of the things that you're.
You also get this, when you have a small board, you get a fiefdom. And sometimes people don't like fiefdoms broken. And I'm not saying that our board is that way, but
You don't think it does.
I'm just saying.
That
that's what
happens with
happens.
7-member
That's what
boards too.
happens. Yeah, it
It's
happens.
difficult for
But,
them
yeah.
to communicate with each other because 2 can't discuss
That's-
a particular matter, whereas our board 2 can.
Yeah.
But obviously 3.
That's another really good point.
Right.
2 members.
Okay. So that's, I'm done. So Dennis, administrative report?
You got it all.
I think we got it all right.
To adjourn?
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
No.
Oh.
Michael,
So moved.
did you make a motion?
To adjourn.
Mr. Connors made a motion to adjourn. So he's second. All in favor?
I.
All opposed? No one's gonna oppose that.
Give you a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
I did forget one thing,
No
so I'm not
Celtics
gonna
game
bring it
tonight.
up.
Say good night.